Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this apart. I can still just touch it. Got it warmed up real good from a heat gun, and just warming up the perimeter. The idea during separation of this, this is the HTC 8X, by the way, Windows-based phone. Now the tendency is to want to start breaking it apart here, come around the top and peel it out, but that's actually much more difficult than if you work your way through the bottom and peel it up. You just have to be careful of the power card that's underneath here. Some adhesive down there that attaches it to the main plane that's in there, that metal chassis that you're going to want to separate. And then you can get it apart, and it should be much easier for you to do so. This is rather difficult to see during separation, but what's happening here is the main chassis of the screen assembly is held in by clips. It's sort of clipped into position into the backing, and so when you're separating this, you want to make sure your tool makes it underneath the assembly. What I need to do is I need to work the tool around in such a way that I'm able to get the whole assembly to lift out of the back rather than just separate the screen. And again, we're at the bottom of the phone, and so we want to be particularly careful here. But you can see just how strong the backing is hanging on to the assembly. So it's more than just wrapping around the top of the screen. It's actually grabbing clips, I guess you would say, of the assembly to hold it in place. So as I'm separating the right side assembly from the back cover, I'm seeing a lot of the buttons are starting to pull away. The flex cables are pulling away a little bit as I'm unfortunately having to put a lot of pressure as this cover slides down over the edge. And up at the top here, we have kind of the same situation. There's the flex cable, and the button was just laying in there from underneath, and it's fallen down inside of the backing here. So once I get it all disassembled, I'll be able to get to that button again. So during disassembly, I'm seeing the flash card is mounted in the side. That needs to come out in order to allow this edge to fall back off of the assembly. So that's just it just pulls right out. Now this is really the most disassembly that you need to do to replace the screen. You're going to just disconnect these two connections, and then the connectors will fall through the slots, and then you can remove your digitizer assembly and reinstall it. Other videos have you taking all of this other hardware off, completely unnecessary. It does you no good, and just simply disconnect your cables here and here. They fall through the slots in the chassis. It's going to be the same difference even if you take all of this off. They still are going to feed through those same slots. So there's really no point in removing all of that. That is the quick and easy way to replace the screen and digitizer. So I'm going to go ahead and remove. There was two pieces of yellow tape that were holding this down. There was one across the cable, one across the top. So all of that has to be removed. And then there's two small ledges on either side of the cable, and I'm just going to take my screwdriver here and gently apply some pressure, and the cable comes free. Well, what an unbelievable argument I've had getting this thing apart. Actually separated the LCD from the digitizer trying to remove the other side. We have a cable that comes down the back of the LCD. Anyway, this progresses up and pops out on the other side here. So that also gets its folding treatment. And I was able to just pry it, just get in there and pry it apart. So I've got the main assembly here, and I'm going around the edges here, just removing the adhesive, and I've worked my way around the chassis. This is a very sticky foam adhesive, and you can heat the chassis, but I found it actually works a little better if you just heat the tool, and then you can scrape that off, and then we have to reapply some adhesive. I'm going to use the same adhesive we use for our iPads. I know some guys like to use the 3M stuff, but I like to use this other stuff that I found that actually is the thicker black adhesive. It's more of a factory application, so I'm going to use that on this phone chassis. And this is where the LCD and digitizer assembly will set. The only thing that needs to be transferred over is the earpiece filter, and this plastic piece here, it just removes easily from the back. I just used a pair of needle nose and just came in from underneath and popped it free, and then that's just gonna be snapped back in place on the new one. So what I've done at this point is I've completed custom cutting adhesives from my kit and put them in place around the perimeter in the same areas where the adhesive used to be. I've left the backing in place because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to breadboard my new LCD and the back case. So I've got, what that means is everything is connected, but it's not really glued together. It allows me to turn it on, test it, and make sure that this assembly is going to work. That way, if for some reason it does not work, it's going to be a lot easier to take it apart again, replace whatever needs replaced, or hopefully find something that's simply left disconnected. To breadboard this, all I'm really doing is there are two areas. First here, which you can see I've already fed the cable through, and up here. Once those cables are fed through, I will then connect them here and up here where they belong. As you're working on this assembly, you'll notice that throughout the phone there are several contacts that are raised off the board, and it turns out that all of these contacts are actually crucial to the functionality of the phone once you get it back together, because in the back case section you can see those contacts are pressed up against several areas throughout that back housing. Now once you've got your glass underneath and you're breadboarding it, you're going to go ahead and connect the cables here and up here, and you'll see these, what I call bite wings. These are the handles on either side here that you can use to remove and install the cable. It's important that these are pretty much butted all the way up against the plastic. There shouldn't really be much of a gap there. So I've finally connected the antenna lead and the final ribbon cable right here that is part of the connection between the back case and the main chassis. So I'm going to close that so that all those contacts are in place, and install the SD card. I'm going to have to put the button back in up here. That fell out during disassembly. Since this screen can be particularly fragile, so I've learned, I'm going to reinstall the chassis by using my sponging tool and pressing on the metal part of the chassis rather than pressing down on the glass portion here to get everything seated in, and then I'll remove the adhesives and then finally set the glass in. Alright, so I had to plug the phone into some power, but I was able to verify that the LCD is working properly. To really assemble it properly, I just had to keep working with it. Eventually, with the sponging tool, I got it, and it's not really seated properly until the blue plastic clips of the case are up over the ridges that ride along the chassis on both sides. And so you can kind of take your fingernails and squeeze and push the edges around until you can see that that has taken place. Removed all my adhesive tapes, the backings, and as you can see now they're all real shiny, and that's how you can kind of tell that you did get everything. And then I'm just going to go ahead and set this down. It just rides on the top, just flush with the edges, so it doesn't really take anything special to set it down. I've folded my cables ahead of time, so those aren't going to get in the way. And then I'm going to make sure before I set this down that those folds are still in place, so it doesn't put any unnecessary pressure on the LCD. And here we have our finished product. I think what the key ended up being was during disassembly, especially during reassembly, if you start like an iPod and come in to the chassis this way and lay it in there, it's much easier to deal with than starting from the back and trying to lay it in at an angle that way.